I've been reading all the books in Oblivion, and I'm going to make a full series where I cover each of these sections of books. There is someone who so kindly put together a giant PDF, in which if you want to read it, I will link down below, of all the books, and this one will cover all the biographies. This is the first video I've made for this channel, and I recommend it be best enjoyed on your second monitor. With every book, I will give you the name of it, a rating of it, a synopsis of the lore, and then a basic opinion from me about what I thought of the book. Up first is the biography of the Wolf Queen. I gave this book a 7 out of 10. As for the lore in this book, it covers the story of Patema, the woman who would become the Wolf Queen of Solitude. It starts with her birth, as she's born the granddaughter of one of the emperors. She goes off to marry the King of Solitude and pretty much takes control there. She gives birth to a son, one of the many Uriels throughout all of Tamriel's history. Her brother ends up taking the throne after their grandfather and father dies. This man is named Antiochus, and as for his rule, it's described in the book that history books of his reign are nearly pornographic in their depictions of life in court. He was a very sleazy man, to say the least. After very likely killing her own brother, assassinating him, and or casting a spell on him to cause him to fall into a coma that he would never awake from, he showed up to the court of elders before they could coronate Antiochus's daughter and said, "Hey, my brother was a sleazy man and his wife couldn't please him. Now every brothel in Cyrodiil pretty much has a claim to the throne through some bastard he left behind. So why not pick my child Uriel III instead?" Much to her chagrin, they disagreed and still made his daughter the empress. And so Kintira was named empress, and she did not take that very well and immediately ran off to start a war. The War of the Red Diamond is for who will become emperor. Of course, on one side we have Patema and her son Uriel, and on the other side we have pretty much the rest of her siblings. And the cliff notes are that she at one point defeats her brother Magnus at High Rock.
Magnus.
I have the high
Rock.
But as she wins that war, she finds out that her son was captured on another front. She plans to ransom him, but ends up finding out that he died while being moved via caravan by an angry mob who hated him. At that moment, her brother Sepphoris is named emperor, and that is pretty much the beginning of her end. She retreats back to Solitude, starts working with a bunch of vampires, necromancers, and ends up being found dead after the siege of Solitude, sitting in a room, smiling creepily, and not alive. It's theorized that her spirit was so strong she even became a Daedra after death. As for opinions on this book, it's pretty good. If you want a quick, clean history of the Wolf Queen and you kind of want some Elder Scrolls lore, that's a super simple way to do it. You can read that book. It's pretty entertaining. Surprised to see the word nearly pornographic written in there, which made me giggle. So it can be a fun time reading this book. There is a longer series, and this is the synopsized version of it. But if you end up liking the biography of the Wolf Queen, there is a set of books. We will go over volumes 1 to 8 of just the Wolf Queen, where you learn that the title of unambiguously evil that was given to her at the beginning was very true, and I affectionately call her the Bitch Queen, and we will refer to her son as Usurpiel for the rest of the books, because at times I'm going to start mentioning other Uriels through these biographies, and you're going to need a key, a Uriel key, that I'll throw up over here for which Uriel is which, but we currently have Uriel III, otherwise known as Usurpiel. Moving on to the biography of Queen Berenzia. I gave this an 8 out of 10. So the story begins in Morrowind as a dark elf princess is found in the wreckage after a battle. She's given to a loyal empire noble, somebody in Skyrim who will raise her and essentially teach her to be an empire loyalist. She's super kind and trusting. All the different kids in the family, her adopted, brothers and sisters love her. And she ends up talking to this boy named Straw, a stable boy who lies and tells her that they're actually going to sell her to be a concubine. So she runs away with him to Riften. The stable boy really did love her, but was very possessive and found this was the only way to really lock her in. She didn't think of him that way. She thought of him only as a friend. And Straw ended up falling in with the Thieves Guild in Riften, specifically a Khajiit named Theris. She overheard them planning a robbery of the Empire, one of their cash stores or something, and she ran away. She felt so bad. Her loyalty that she was nurtured with to the Empire made her sell out her own friend, and the person she happened to sell him out to was a guy named General Symmachus, who actually was searching for her. And if that seems very coincidental, you'll find out why later. He told her that she would be returned to the city in which she was found in the wreckage, Mournhold. When she turned 18, she would be the new queen of there, but for now she must go to Imperial Court, and that's the end of Volume 2. In Volume 3, she and Symmachus end up getting married. It's officiated by Tiber Septim himself. They were married for several hundred years before their first child was born, Helseth, a boy. And at around the same time, the Nightingale ended up stealing the Staff of Chaos from the Mournhold mines. They end up having a second child named Morgaya, named after Symmachus' mother. And this is about 8 years after Helstos was born. And around that time, Empire's relations starts to get strained with them, and they're very confused because Tiber Septim literally did their marriage, but they're elves, they're long-lived. They need not just relationship with one, but the whole family line in order to keep that. So she attempted to reconcile, traveling to go see Uriel Septim. This one's the Uriel the Seventh. And for the Uriel key here, this is our Uriel. This is the one we meet in Oblivion. And when she meets him, it turns out that the Emperor is actually the Nightingale in disguise. She told no one, and she ended up sneaking away and starts planning what she's going to do, and finds out while she's planning that her husband died in a battle against revolting peasants due to that deteriorated relationship with the Empire. They ended up overthrowing him, and her kingdom is now owned by rebels, and she's trapped there, and her husband is dead. She ends up colluding with the king of High Rock, King Eadwire. He had seen some sort of vision and realized that the Nightingale was formerly Jagar Tharn, an Imperial battle mage, but he has a ton of different alter egos. They scheme together to unmask the Emperor. She ends up working to befriend the fake Emperor so that she can learn the location of the Staff of Chaos, because she knows that they hold it. It's the Nightingale, and hopefully getting their trust so she can learn these locations. Meanwhile, Eadwire says that there's somebody who can help, and it's this man known as the Champion, or this person known as the Champion, locked in the dungeons below Cyrodiil. So she helps unlock them and gives them a location of the first piece of the staff. And once she has all the locations of the pieces, she has to trust the Champion to find them all, and so she flees with Eadwire to Wayrest and High Rock, prevents the Nightingale from retaliating with more than just maybe some wayward assassins, which they can handle. The Champion does end up finding all 8 pieces and uses it to destroy Tharn. Berenzia and King Eadwire end up getting married, and she's still alive now over in High Rock. He was elderly when they wed, so she knows that he will pass away, and she just hopes that after he does, she gets to live a quiet life. So like I said, I rated this one 8 out of 10, and I did that because for the most part, this was a pretty fun read. There was a lot of twists and turns. I kept thinking maybe that Champion was a playable character from another game, and maybe I'm crazy about that, but it seemed super odd that it was just called the Champion, not a named person. So I haven't done much research into that to find out if it is, but it's a pretty fun read, and it only became more surprising to read. Much like how Potema's Wolf Queen, Biography of the Wolf Queen, is one book, the biography of Queen Berenzia also has a follow-up longer book talking about it, and it turns out this one is just kind of like whitewashed history. So we can learn more about the other one later. For our next book, we have Galarian the Mystic. I rated this book 4 out of 10. This book takes place on Somerset Isle, and it follows a boy named Trectus who was born to laborers. In the area that he lived, they were told that, peasants shouldn't read. It incites rebellion and, free thought. So he was illegally taught how to read, and his dad was even caught smuggling books, and he ended up being hung. And it's likely his wife's fault, as she was very religious and devout to the people who ruled. So after that, he ran away and was found by a troubadour group, half dead. He joined them as an errand boy, but one of the members was trained as a mystic and found Trectus very capable of magic. And suddenly it reveals that he goes on to be the founder of the Mage Guild. It was kind of a shocker ending. That's why I gave this one 4 out of 10. And that's really all it is. That's the story of Galarian the Mystic. It wasn't really worth reading, as it was not very insightful, but maybe there's more lore later. I found some of these books were kind of mid, and then later they were made interesting. The next book is A Short Life on Uriel Septim the Seventh. If you look at our Uriel key, this is our Uriel, so this is the one that you meet in the beginning of Oblivion. I rated it 5 out of 10. It's pretty much just a marking of accomplishments over time. So he was focused on conquering eastward towards Black Marsh and Morrowind. During this time, he got a lot of help from a battle mage named Jagar Thom. He was seduced and married to Kaula Voria. Turns out she's a bitch, and they end up spending the next years pissing each other off, and the kids suffered because of that. Tharn did the classic evil advisor bit and imprisoned Uriel in Oblivion. It's said that during the time he was trapped, he only can recall it as sleeping and waking nightmares, but he often can't recall it at all. He went from prideful and bold to very shrewd and pessimistic. The book actually references another book's volume series within it, which made me laugh. I thought that was kind of cool for in-universe referencing. In recent memory, his most impressive feat was turning Lilac Bay, an area near High Rock and Morrowind, into a civilized area by practically making an FBI division of the Blades, kind of an undercover incognito group. After restoring the prosperity to the Empire, he focused mostly on Morrowind. He helped shift the power from the Great Houses to Helseth's court as the tribunal cults kind of fell apart, and established the Nine as the dominant religion in Vardenfell region. There are questions left unanswered about what Uriel 7 knew of the Neverine prophecies and what he was doing over there. If those things don't make sense to you, that's just how the book describes it. So if you stick around, maybe we'll find out more about what that means. I gave it a 5 out of 10 because it was pretty much just a bullet point list of what he did. And it wasn't very narrative driven. It was truly just, he did this, he did this, he did this. And if you're not very familiar, a lot of this lore in these books takes place near Morrowind and Vardenfell and High Rock and Somerset Isles, because that's where the older games were. So these books sometimes were brought over from the last one. It's actually just now that I'm realizing Helseth's court might be Berenzia's son, because Helseth was his name, but there's so many people named the same name. There's 7 Uriels at the point we're at in the story, and there's 2 Pelagiuses. One is Batema's father. One will go on to become the Mad King of Solitude, and I think you actually meet him in the game of Skyrim. Moving on, we have the Magnus of Pelagius. Like I said, some names we're going to see over and over again. This one is actually Magnus's son. So this is that same family from the Wolf Queen. I rate this book 5 out of 10. Pelagius was born Thoris Pelagius Septim in Wayrest during the reign of his uncle Antiochus. People didn't really see his madness for the first 10 years of his life because he was pretty normal around that time. He didn't really go crazy until after the War of the Red Diamond, which the events are kind of outlined in this book, but since we've already gone over it, it's safe to say that we'll just go into it a little bit more and say that, Antiochus dies, Batema gets mad, she tries to take the throne, all this happens, and because she was the Wolf Queen of Solitude, after they're defeated, Pelagius is sent to become the King of Solitude. Pelagius was described as a personable, handsome boy, interested in sport, magic, and music, but the moment that he became the King of Solitude, he suddenly began gorging and was just found to be very rotund. And only months later, another person who went to go visit him described him as near emaciated. This was one of the first times they were like, something is very wrong with him. Sepphoris ended up dying childless during that Siege of Solitude, which ended up making Pelagius' father the current emperor. So it means that should his father die, he will be the first to the throne, even though he is seeming to be mad. He would get really weird and do things like lock people in the room with him until they'd slip an unsigned declaration of war through the bottom of the door. He once tore off all of his clothes during a festival speech, and by the emperor's orders, he was forced to marry a dark elf noble named Kataria Rathim. The reason she was picked was because she had really good political skills and was probably able to disguise his madness better than anyone else. And she had a hand in helping the enemies during the Red Diamond War, so it was kind of like a keep your enemies close sort of thing. When his father did eventually die, Pelagius' sister took the throne of Solitude, and then he ended up going on to become emperor. It's said that he fainted when the crown was placed upon his head, but it's unverified. The Elder Council will pretty much do all the decision-making during his reign, trying to keep Pelagius from becoming an embarrassment. An example of that is that it's written in the book that when an Argonian ambassador from Black Rose came to court, Pelagius insisted in only speaking in all grunts and squeaks, as that was the Argonians' natural language. He also became oddly obsessed with cleanliness when he moved to the Imperial Palace. Rumor has it that he would shit on the floor just so people would clean it. He began also biting visitors as they came in, so he was eventually sent to an asylum, and his wife, Kataria, ended up reigning as regent in his stead, although, of course, the Elder Council did most of the actual ruling. She was the face of the empire at the moment. His wife probably did sleep with someone else during this time, but she claims that they had a child conceived during one of her visits to the asylum. Thus, people must take her word since she is the face, and her child Uriel IV was born, and this is bastard Uriel, and he would come to be found out later, a child between her and her consort Lariat. And so we can go ahead and add another Uriel to our Uriel key, and this is Uriel 4. This is bastard Uriel. Pelagius would go on to die at age 34 after a brief fever in the Temple of Kinnereth. Kataria would end up ruling 46 more years before passing power to her only true son she had with Pelagius, a boy named Cassander. And forever on, Pelagius lives in legend as Pelagius the Mad. As for the Pelagius the Mad story, I gave it a 5 out of 10. It was pretty just boring. It was kind of just describing a lot of it was the War of the Red Diamond, so depending on the order you read this, you might find his antics funny. I did find his squeaking, biting, and shitting on the floor funny, but as far as like fiction, it wasn't like an interesting story. It was more a lore dump. Some of these books, like the one I'll talk about next, are very fun because they're just good fiction. You genuinely are reading them because they're a story. Other ones are recounts for lore, and all of them take different voices, so I don't blame any writer for that. And I actually think one writer wrote a lot of these, so they've got skills to pay the bills, but some of them just aren't as entertaining to me. So what we're on now is the real Berenzia. This is an 8 out of 10 for me. So in volume 1, we're introduced to Semachus, a boy that in the first book that we read, the biography of Berenzia, we know will go on to marry her, is currently attending or going to attend the festival for Berenzia's birth, because there's going to be a feast and a big celebration. But the problem is that Symmachus's mother is sick and he needs a priest to help. And so he runs out to go find one, but because of Berenzia's birth, none of them are willing to leave. They all need to be in attendance due to the ruling people saying they need to be there. And so he keeps swearing that if they don't go, his mom's going to be dead by the time they get back. And he ends up being correct. He gives a priest some gold to help, and the priest gets back, attempts to help his mother, and then says, "Listen, son, nothing I can do. I won't charge you anymore," because he didn't actually have enough money to pay him outright. And so this sleazy guy shows up, does nothing, says, "I'm not going to charge you any more than I already have." Symmachus, in his rage and anger, ends up shoving him, and he knocks his head against the fireplace mantle or somewhere around there and ends up dying instantly. He takes back his gold and ends up running away. And it kind of leaves off with him saying he'll swear revenge. He's angry, and he'll get his revenge by living long enough to have a child with Berenzia. Really weird form of anger, but he swears that, that'll be his revenge, is, he'll wed that child and have her children. But he's a dark elf. He's got a long time to live and to be angry about this. So let's see how that goes for him. When Berenzia was found in the rubble, like we know from the original story, she was taken to another house that was said to have loved her, and she was loved back. And it turns out that is not true. The family she was with did not like her, and she grew with this, what she described as a cold, clean hatred for them. She believed herself to be noble and that she would be better than these people, not like them, these peasants. She ended up fooling around with a lot of the boys around the town. She was pretty promiscuous, and she fell for this one guy, Straw, not necessarily love at the time, but she enjoyed his company. He was a bit of a himbo. He called her Barry. It was cute as fuck. But she looked down on him for having what she called simple dreams. She actually read a situation incorrectly and thought that she was going to be sold off. And so it was actually her idea to run away, and Straw went with her because he loved her. She did not feel the same. They end up living this kind of wild life on the road, working for this disreputable merchant caravan that ends up straying off the paths that are protected but require tolls. So they end up getting into a lot of fights and scrapes, so she's pretty good as a fighter. Currently at this point, she's disguised as a boy, but when they would find wayward inns, she would, redress as a girl, and she'd find some men to fool around with, but she was always very confused because they would pay her afterward, which really got me to laugh when I was reading the story. I was surprised by that. She finally decides to give Straw a kiss before friend zoning him directly after, which was kind of a dick move. That will come back later in her life. In Volume 2, Barry ends up joining the Thieves Guild in Riften. She got in by having such mad sex that the book literally redacts itself. It has a line that this, was not transcribed on purpose because of its intimate nature. Theris is a Khajiit. Theris recommends that they have a threesome, her, Straw, and himself. Kind of freaky. I think he's into boys because, at this point she's still dressed like a boy. So Theris fucks, though. He's kind of great and gets them to take a job robbing the Imperials. When he goes to do it, however, they get caught, and he literally throws her right under the bus, pushing her into the arms of General Symmachus, who has come to capture her. Volume 3, Symmachus has captured her. He gave her a bow and said he would return her to Mournhold to rule. Straw came to bid farewell to Barry, and she told them that they'd write and talk, and that she got him to agree that because she's going to be a ruler, he's going to get his farm he always wanted, and it'll be so nice. They'll see each other, and he shakes his head and reveals that Symmachus had cut out his tongue. This causes Barry to weep openly, vomit, and just become completely distraught. Her and Symmachus had kind of come to an agreement about what the punishments would be, and nothing involved him having his tongue cut out. And she ends up finding out that he also had Theris drawn and quartered and his head put on a spike outside of town. Symmachus clearly now showing his colors. As we know, he does not love Berenzia. Whatever they're going to grow to have is really twisted and gross, but I can't tell how I feel about it by the end. You'll see what I mean. But Symmachus ends up taking her back to the Imperial City. That means she had to leave her only real motherly figure. She met a Nordic woman who had a thing for cats and therefore had a thing to enjoy and want to care for Theris and some of the other members of the Thieves Guild, but she was unaware of their affiliation. She was just a kind-hearted woman. So she says goodbye to her, and I really feared she was going to get hurt. Luckily for us, Katisha lives fine the rest of her life, but she never sees her or Straw or Theris ever again. Upon arriving in the Empire, she was told by Symmachus, we can find another girl to play your part, so you better do it well, and essentially gives her a story to retell. That's the story we read about in the biography of Berenzia. While there, she ends up actually falling in love with the Emperor, Tiber Septim, she ends up banging with him at night, kind of on a weekly meeting schedule. They're having a great time until, of course, she gets pregnant. And at that moment, we learn Tiber Septim's opinion on abortion, as he says, no, it is now but a possibility, might be a not yet gifted with the soul or quickened to life. I will not have it. I forbid it. And Barry ends up trying to flee from the room naked, afraid, because elves only will conceive of maybe 1 to 2 children in their life. And Tiber made it very clear this is not like an emotional decision from him, like my wife's gonna find out. He just said, this son will put my sons in danger. And he's right. The War of the Red Diamond, all these sorts of things can happen. So she wakes up covered in blood and the baby is gone. And soon after, she leaves to Mournhold. In Volume 4, she returns home, becomes queen. She no longer wishes for men and keeps to herself and really dives into her people's customs. Tiber ends up dying and Pelagius ends up taking the throne. Symmachus ends up one night finally kissing her. They've been together for a long time, probably longer than a mortal life. So even though he's weird and what he did to her, she ends up feeling this comfort she did when she kissed Straw back long ago. And he asks if they'd marry, and she pretty much says, why not? It's not much of a proposal. It's pretty much, you've made me wait this long. When's it going to happen? And she said, well, you have been my most trusted advisor. You're the reason I'm here. Let's do it. They struggle to have a kid, and she feels so bad she actually offers for him to leave her. He declines. Clearly, we know why. He ends up leaving to go deal with some other business, and while he's gone, the Nightingale ends up performing in her court. She doesn't know who it is, and she finds him kind of refreshing, and she's smitten and kind of falls head over heels for him. They're about to bang. They kissed. He tells her that what they need to, fix all their problems is this thing from the mines beneath their estate. She says, okay, baby, I'll follow you anywhere. And then he leaves without banging her. And she's kind of mad about that. They go down to the mines, and while walking through the mines, she's like, now take me. I'm ready. Her body seemed to hum, every nerve, every muscle taut. Not yet, not here, not like this, he waved, indicating the age-dusty debris and grim walls of rock. Just a little while longer. Reluctantly, Berenzia nodded her assent. They resumed walking. She literally just tries to be like, take me here in the tunnels. I'm like, she is that down bad for this guy. And they end up retrieving what she thought would be some sort of horn, but it ends up being the Staff of Chaos. As the statue collapses from this ordeal, Symmachus comes running in to rescue her, only to find the Nightingale saying kind of like, you can have her back, bro, as he disappears. The people were told that they were set upon by spiders and that the Nightingale fell into a crevasse to kind of hide what happened. After this incident, she tells Symmachus that she had fallen head over heels for the Nightingale. He forgives her. They have makeup sex. And 8 years later, they'll finally have children, and this will really cement her love. And we're left at the end of the book knowing that really the Staff of Chaos is not as powerful as this horn they were speaking of, but that the staff will allow him to sow dissension and chaos wherever he should go. In Volume 5, we learn that the person in charge of locating the staff is a battle mage, imperial battle mage, named Jagar Tharn, as we know is the Nightingale. Symmachus didn't like this person, and Berenzia postulated that maybe it is the Nightingale, which Symmachus immediately said, no, it's not. They end up giving birth to a son named Helseth, and about 8 years later, they end up giving birth to a child named Morgaia, which was the name of Symmachus' mother. Kind of effed up, but this really cements their marriage, and so Symmachus begs that she take the children and go to Imperial City, as for some reason relationships are deteriorating and straining with the Empire. The peasants won't sit idle for long. He asked her not to come back until she's fixed that because he doesn't believe it's safe. And he said, relay that, I helped build this empire and I can help dismantle it. That should get him to listen. So she waited weeks, because they made her wait weeks, to go speak to Uriel, our Uriel, if you remember the key, the Uriel the Seventh. During those weeks, Symmachus would send word about what was going on and not to bring the children home and, stay strong, those sorts of things, until one day they suddenly stopped, the same day that she ends up being able to meet the Emperor. But when she met the Emperor, she brought her children with them and could see some reason this weird look in his face. Looking at her children was this expression of yearning, maybe even regret, and her mind kind of snaps. She thinks this must be like illusion magic. Something's wrong. And so she learned all about it after the Nightingale's betrayal, but she can't use her magic in this moment to prove that it's a fake emperor, because before she can probably do it, people can sense magic, as she describes, and that the moment she flares up, people are going to stop her from doing whatever she's doing, and it'll only hurt her chances of fixing this. She ends up saying, hey, Emperor, do you remember Justin? I'm sorry that I heard about his death. And he goes, yeah, I really am sad about that, and I wish not to speak of his death anymore. He was an old friend. And she brought this up because Justin was actually his imaginary friend, which was actually a girl, and that only years ago he was joking that she ran off with a Khajiit and left to elsewhere. And so this was clearly her ace in the hole to know this is not the correct person. As she leaves the meeting, she gets message that King Eadwyr wants to meet her. And that same night, when she's sitting about to enjoy dinner, her Nighthawk arrives with a letter announcing that Symmachus is dead. And moments after King Eadwyr enters, she's just found out this news, and he says, "Hey, I don't know what you got going on, but I believe the king." And she's like, "The king is fake." And at the same time, he's like, "Wow, that's crazy. I saw a vision from Jagar Tharn, the real one's former apprentice, as she was killed. She sent a vision to me to let me know what was going on so I could try to fix it. And so we need to figure out what's going on." And she says, "Okay, but I need to tell you my husband's dead." He promises her that he will protect her children if they become orphaned. A little bit later, the emperor, the Nightingale, summons her to the court and knows that she saw through him. He was ready now to be with her. He had the power of the empire underneath of him and was now like, I did mean what I said back when I met you. I do like you. What can I do for you? I have the power of everything. Clearly, he had planned this deterioration so that Symmachus would die, so that she would be able to be married again. And he says, "What do I need to do for you?" And she just says, "I want to walk in the garden and a song or two." AKA, she wants to be courted like they were once before. He smiles, kisses her hand, and promises to do so. Turns out that he kept a journal, but it's written in a bunch of shorthand, so it takes a lot of meetings with him and sneaking this journal away to decrypt it to find the locations of the staff. So it takes a long time before she finally has them all. The Nightingale in this time loves arguing and making her mad and then making up afterward. And she's about 6 months pregnant with the Nightingale's child before she finds the final staff location and the Mount of Dagoth-Ur. So at this time, like we know from the last story, she has the champion out in the world gathering all the pieces. She flees with Eadwyr to Wayrest, and the Nightingale can't pursue her because he is disguised as the emperor. He can't just up and disappear. He brought all this power to one place, but now he's kind of stuck. Even if she shows up in town, it's even hard for her to be in danger because she's protected by all this imperial bureaucracy, the same one that kept her from meeting the emperor soon enough to stop her husband's death. So as kind of a big FU, if you remember, she does end up getting married to Eadwyr, and the person performing the ceremony is the Nightingale. He has no choice in the matter because it's his job as emperor to marry those of a certain status. At that point, with them having fled, there's nothing more for her to do. She didn't really love the king, but she was fond of him, and he treated her children fondly. They bid their time waiting for the champion's success in their mission, and the story ends with a cute little ending, which I will end this video with here. I was a big fan of this book. The whole her looking down on Straw for having peasant dreams, as she called them, was really kind of rude and messed up in the beginning, and then what she's doing and all these things, and her being a carouser and then growing up to be this queen is really interesting. And so I'll leave with just this last bit for the video of the final passage from that book, and I recommend this book series over the others if you want to, but now that you've heard the story, you don't need to. In the end, she was a dark elf, and she had all the time in the world. All the time, but no more love left to give, no more hatred left to burn. She had nothing left. Nothing but pain and memories and her children. She wanted only to raise her family and provide them a good life, and to be left to live out what remained of hers. She had no doubt it was going to be a long life yet, and during it she wanted peace and quiet and serenity, of her soul as well as of her heart. Peasant dreams. That's what she wanted. That was what the real Berenzia wanted. That was what the real Berenzia was. Peasant dreams. Pleasant dreams.